All right, we are here back with Unlocked Football. Special guest today. As you guys know, our aim is to just provide value, provide information for players up and coming. Whether you're playing football, whether you're trying to make a business in it, or whether you just enjoy it and it's your passion, we're trying to provide value that'll hopefully help you along your path. So the guest we have today has done so much within the game. He's provided a lot of value for me, and I know with this chat we'll have today, he'll again provide a lot of value. So Mario Halapir, thanks for coming on.
Zach, it's a pleasure and a privilege, to be fair. And I wish you all the best with your Unlocked Football. Hopefully in the future it's going to be what you want it to be. So good luck.
I appreciate it. It means a lot coming from someone who's, like we're going to get into today, the multiple businesses you've started within football. But before we get into that, for me, I think what a lot of us football players, what we do after football and our other venues is kind of a reflection of how we are as players. I kind of recognize that myself. I don't know if you do, but what type of player were you kind of when you were younger, if you go back to your playing days? And how would you describe yourself as a player?
When I was younger, well, for one, I mean, that's an interesting analogy because I've never thought about that as, how I am post-soccer or post-football compared to, when I was younger and when I was playing. But
do you think it's accurate?
I don't know. I don't, when you say that, it doesn't resound really realistic to me for that perspective. I never thought about it. I mean, what was it like a player? My God, that would be best evaluated by somebody else. But I think probably technical. I'd say I was a technical player. Probably my IQ for the game was decent. It's hard to talk like that about yourself, but I think those are probably the mainstays of my game. I was always fit. I think I was a decent athlete. I was never the fastest on the team, but I was one of the fastest. I was generally the fittest on the team. But I trained all the time, and not even trained, I played. I was a multi-sport athlete. So, you know what? I've never really thought about it. I have to think about that a little bit more. You've caught me off guard to say how that perceives the
well,
what we do.
The only reason I say that is because I look at myself, and you trained me, and you kind of know what kind of player I am. And maybe not player on the field, but how I approach football is like, if I analyze my matches and realize, look, crossing is something I've had chances to do, but I haven't been good at it. It's not good enough. I realize I have to pinpoint this specific thing and work on that until it's good enough. And so that's how I kind of approach other things, where I guess it's like anything. You put in the work in a specific area and you hope for improvement.
You know what? That's actually, that's a great perspective, and you don't think about that. Now, even just the first thought that would come to my head would be probably my competitive nature within the game itself.
Yeah.
It really translates to the business world. I mean, in a game, on the field, I think I'm a little bit different than I'm off the field, because some people would think I'm maybe a little bit mental on the field. But winning, when I was playing, I automatically, it was just I wanted to win.
Yeah.
And whatever it took to win, I wanted to do. But when you look at that from a business perspective, it's not very different. I treat business the same way. I don't want to lose.
Yes.
So whatever I've done, I think I've approached it the same way. It's that, and I used to say, business replaced my playing career. From that, it filled that void of competing for something and making something happen. So that part, that perspective is good. So I learned something today, which is good.
And I guess obviously the difference with business and football, many differences, but is there like a specific level of okay, this is successful, this isn't, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but that's just a kind of question for our viewers to think about. But you spoke a bit about the business side of things, so I want to start with SportsLink. This was your first venture, I believe, in business, and soccer related as well. So that's 30 years now in the making, SportsLink, right?
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
That in itself is a huge success and something to be proud of. So you've impacted a lot of people within the community. But thinking 30 years back, what did you see in the football market that at that time I'm sure was much different, maybe even non-existent, compared to now? So what did you see, and how did you see an opportunity for this business to succeed there?
Well, let me preface one part, and it wasn't. It was Barry McLean, who you know as well.
Yes.
It was Barry McLean and I that started the Sports Link. So together
Okay.
we worked together in the project to develop it. And he was there and he moved on. Barry and I have collaborated on many things over the years in many different businesses. And so after the first year, I actually bought Barry out because he had another project that he wanted to continue to work on. So since that part I was there. But even prior to that, to getting to SportsLink and getting it started, I mean, we moved to a farm when I was 17 years old out in Petersburg, so we had like 84 acres of land.
Yeah.
And my dad and I mean, I was the one that was pushing for that. And we even back then we went to the township to ask if we could put up a bubble, like a dome, because at that time they didn't even know what artificial turf was. Of course, we were shut down. We couldn't do that. But so it went back then. I think it was always my dream to. I mean, I didn't know the exact path I was going to take, but I always wanted to stay in football because I mean that's what I love. Outside of my family, that's my passion. That's what I love to do.
Yes.
The big part and getting to the sports thing. So Barry and I, we talked about a lot. We basically assessed the need for. There wasn't a market. You're right. Like there's a very small market at that particular point in time. There was a few retailers that were soccer specific. JMT being probably the most notable. But we saw definitely a potential, especially for our area, and a lot of it stemmed from me was that looking for football cleats. We'd go to and Webco, who is not around anymore. They they'd have three types of soccer shoes. So we would we go drive down to Toronto and try to get our equipment there. So anyways, we thought there's a potential for that market, but beyond that was. For me, I was like, I kind of planned that out in the beginning. I wanted to have like 3 stages. I thought if I could, develop a retail business, and then after that, it would stem into, developing a soccer school, which eventually did happen, and then finally a facility. So that was my 3 stages, and I think the business, the SportsLink, was a way to approach the customer base, which was players, coaches, parents, administrators, everybody within the game. Would come into that fold. So I thought that was a great way to get them to get that going.
Yeah. So you had the vision, obviously, then, which is thinking ahead, because, like I said, that market, like you said, didn't really exist. So to get that vision in place, what kind of things that you can speak about in terms of details? Maybe there's contracts, connections with people you had to make, permits, etc. What kind of things did you have to consider and then execute in order to get that vision up and running to the sports thing that we see now?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I call football still in our country an unregulated industry. Back then, I mean, anybody could do that. There was already a couple of soccer-related stores in our area.
Okay.
When we actually went out, so we went to the trade shows, the consumer show, and to get our account set up with the different brands. So Adidas, Nike, Umbro. Umbro at that time was the big player.
There was a big one.
Oh yeah, Umbro was the big player for football, especially uniforms and things like that. And we went down there, and at the trade show, they gave us the bad news that they were not going to open us up as an authorized agent because they said our area was saturated with people. Because there was also the Sportco, Webco, the current stores, plus some of the soccer specialty stores that were around. So they felt that they didn't need another player in the area to produce this. So we had a quandary there at that point in time that we said, we need Umbro. Umbro, we got Adidas, we got Puma, and the brands that are also big brands. And now, obviously, Adidas is a massive brand. I still remember it was when we already had our location where we are right now in Ontario Street. We just had the upstairs floor and there was nothing in there. And so I set up a table, bunch of chairs. So we brought the guy. We begged the guy from Umbro to come. Yeah. So I said, let me make a presentation to you. We'll make the presentation to explain to you how we feel we can get to where we feel we can get to. The reality is we were at the show and, he wasn't even paying attention to us. Like he was leaned back and he's talking to other people while we were, presenting this.
Yeah.
It irritated me a bit, because I don't think that's respectful. But anyways, we did convince him we went after the show because we asked the lady to make another appointment for us. She said, there's no more appointments. I said, what time is he done? So we stayed till 5 o'clock and convinced them to at least come down to hear us here.
Yeah.
So, I put together this, our business plan and shared it with them. And we basically said, here's our 2-year plan. And if after year 1, we don't meet your numbers, we'll sign whatever we need to sign, close us down, shut us down, we're out.
Yeah.
And then, with that, he had a big smirk on his face and he basically said, well, you know, you guys are a bit naive because the numbers you're producing here are numbers that are, you're going to be one of our top dealers in the country. And I said, to I find that surprising. I said, because if we don't reach those numbers, there probably wouldn't be no point in being in this type of a business. I think the market share, I think there's a massive market share that that hasn't been touched yet, and I believe we can do that. So anyways, I think we hit the 60% mark after year one. So after that, we were their heroes, right? So, you know, that would be one story that I could share. That was a challenge of getting the business going, because it's not just, you know, you would think you just open the doors. It doesn't work that way. And but as far as permits and things like that, nobody cares. If you wanna start your business, if you wanna start a retail business tomorrow, you can do that. Now again, there's a lot more difficulty now with supply chain things like that, and getting authorized agency things. But yeah, that's really the only main thing we had to deal with.
That's funny. So yeah, you spoke about Umbro being the top kind of football distributor at the time, but that's changed now, hasn't it? Like, I mean, you look at Nike, Adidas, Puma. I'd say they're predominantly more ahead of them in terms of, you know, popularity.
Yeah, what I liked about the mainstream now. I mean, Umbro. The one thing Umbro outside of the specialities, I don't think they ever had a real good boot. So you know, their whole. But it was what I loved about Umbro at that time was it was very organic, and it was very much about football, and really had, like, especially the uniforms and things like that. It was a real, like, it was a football story. Whereas I felt the other guys were more corporate. Adidas, you know, Nike, Puma, they're more corporate, but they're a massive player, obviously. And financially, I think there's a lot more money with some of the brands than others. And I think over the course of time, I think just the offering of what Umbro probably had was maybe limited to the mass market. But yeah, at that time, I really loved Umbro. I loved it for that, because I thought it was an organic football brand, and that, you know, that resonates with me as a passionate person about the sport. So I always kind of cared about that, and we tried to, I guess, align ourselves with people that had the same sort of vision. Yeah,
I forgot how popular Umbro was, to be honest. Even I look back when I was growing up, it was just a bit time after you had started SportsLink, but Umbro was quite a popular brand in football, so it makes sense. So we spoke about 30 years now in the business with SportsLink. Lastly, I just want to know, there's been a lot of changes now in terms of marketing. We have e-commerce, you know, social media marketing, all these things. How has SportsLink had to pivot or change a bit of what they've had to do, or what they've done in the past, to continue to be a success over the time period?
Yeah, well, I think one of the key things for us, I think, our survival. The one thing that's allowed us to survive all this time is that we're adaptable, and you know, being able to adapt to the changing market is very, very important. But I think the key to that is also to maintain your integrity, and basically the people we are hasn't changed, and our approach to the business hasn't changed. I think the personal care. I still believe very strongly that personal relationships and personal service still has a place in our society. It has changed because there's direct, you know, we have online business now. We have a ton of business that's online right now, and but there's still that component of customers that come into the store and physically, you know, want to chat with somebody, a real person, not a computer. So, and then, you know, trying shoes on. You know, we carry over 100 different styles of soccer shoes. And, you know, you can buy them online. The problem is, what if they don't fit right? What if they don't feel right? So coming in, it's a process. And fitting a shoe correctly, especially for football, is very, very important. You know, having shoes that are too big, too tight. There's some art to it for sure. And I think that we take pride in understanding that. The last part to that bit, and this is funny because we are known as a soccer specialty business. Just like a lot of other business models that are developed, like even from the beginning, soccer wasn't not the only thing that we actually do at the SportsLink. We are multi-sport. For uniforms, we do uniforms for every sport. But the key is we have a ad specialty and corporate promotions side of the business that actually, that's our big part of our business, to be fair. You know, people will say, oh, soccer is, we're known for that. But I mean, as far as the things that truly, you know, allow our business to thrive, it would be the corporate end of the business. And, you know, we have national accounts that we deal with and service. And I think we've taken that model of how we service our soccer market, and we just basically carry that over. And and apply that to the to the corporate market, and it works
Yeah.
well, which you wouldn't think it does.
Yeah.
Now again, there's some I would say we've relied on loyalty, and we've been fortunate. Local clubs, Kitchener Soccer in particular, an amazing relationship with what we have with that club. But we feel we deserve it because we've always been honest up front and very fair. And understanding that we are in business and we have to make some money. Our margins are, I believe the margins still in soccer are not really great, but it's the market sensitivity, and we have to be aware of that.
Fair enough. You spoke about friendly faces and being personable. Just for the record, I worked at SportsLink, so I was one of those friendly faces. So to say that I can maybe contribute to a bit of the personable that people see when coming into SportsLink, that'd be something I could hold to my chest. So thank you for that. But moving on, now we're going to talk about elite athletes. So this was another one of your business ventures that you actually had mentioned it as a soccer school. So you guys work with player development, both team, individual development programs, things of that nature. So again, was there a market at the time you had started elite athletes? And for the timeline as well, how long after you were in SportsLink did you begin to start elite athletes?
So as I said before, one of the thoughts was to establish the business of SportsLink first, and to allow the public to understand who we are, and meet people, and get them familiar with the faces and get them familiar with the personalities that are involved with this, which I believe gave us the opportunity to start that next phase of the business, which we actually called it Global Soccer in the beginning, and then changed the name over to Elite Athletes. Mm-hmm. The key to that was I wanted to make sure we had some sort of familiarity with the people that we're going to be marketing to. It was a very strange thing to do that at that time. So that's it's 20 years ago, over 20 years ago since we started the soccer business.
Yes.
Or the Global Soccer. And I still remember we started at the gymnasium at Laurier, and not the main gym. We started at the gym underneath it used to be called Seagram Stadium. And we had 20 males and 20 female athletes. Alyssa Lagonia was actually our first female. She was kind of our poster child athlete for elite athletes. She was great.
You've gone on to have a good career too.
Well, I would say, quite impressive. And I'm very happy for her because she was a very passionate person about the sport, very talented right from the beginning. And she deserves all the accolades she gets. And I think she's had a passion for the game, and she's obviously made a great career out of it.
Yeah. So you took the off-field venture, which was you started with SportsLink, then went to a bit of an on-field venture with elite athletes. So that, like you said, was always part of the vision, to start with a retail store and then eventually go into on-field. Okay. So you see now there's a surplus of training services these days. You spoke about it in private. There's academies, other training services, private training, you name it, there's a surplus of it.
100%.
So in your opinion, do you think this is good for Canadian football, or do you think this is something that's going to negatively impact it?
I think there's good to everything, and I think there's some downside to everything. The good part about it, I believe there should be competition. I don't believe in a monopoly, and I don't think one group should control everything, and that's the only place you can go. I think for a lot of time, clubs, not just local clubs, but clubs across the country, I would say held a monopoly on where players could play. I mean, if you're going to play soccer somewhere, you're going to play in one of the clubs. That has changed a bit now with some of the academies coming out that now offer alternatives, and I think the competition for that will hopefully make everybody better, and hopefully make everybody try to do a better job and better servicing of the customer at every scale. The downside, it's an unregulated industry, because I think Zach, tomorrow you want to start your own academy, there's no problem with that. There's not a requirement that states that you have to have this, and that before you can do that. It's unregulated. My choice for doing our academy, and as you know, we've never had teams. I've never run academy teams. Right. We've always strictly done player-focused training. It was all developed through, there were small groups, small group training, groups of 8, groups of 4, individual training. We always aimed at that. We wanted to be a support system for the club system. The reason I thought there was a market for that is God bless volunteers, but a lot of times there's people that volunteer that have never played the game before,
Yes.
that have never, kicked the ball. Now, why I say God bless them is that without them, we wouldn't have teams and we wouldn't have the ability for these kids to participate. However, the downside to that is, well, we want the players to enjoy, but we also want them to, part of the responsibility would be to learn how to play. And once you learn how to play, I think you enjoy the game a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So coming back to the academies, as I say, I think there's a good for the most part is good from a competitive point of view. I think the challenge has been sometimes the claims of what some people will say can happen and occur through their model. And that's we've always stayed away from that. I can't guarantee any one person where their son or daughter is going to end up playing to what level.
Yes.
That's a whole other conversation. So and sometimes that's not always been the case. And I think for those things it's the responsibility of the parents and players to kind of research that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And just sort of live through it. And I do feel bad because sometimes parents come to me to ask for advice and I'm going, it's a daunting task now. It's for a parent right now these days, it's very, very difficult to know because everything costs money. Mm-hmm. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think you should get whatever the best value you can get for the dollar. And I think the great part is a lot of parents want to support their children in this. But it's a maze. It's a maze to, okay, where do I go? How do I do this? Yeah. What's the pathway to this? And so we still have a long way to go. To be able to at least have a little bit more clarity for people that are involved in the game, for sure.
Yeah, even I'm struggling to kind of understand it in terms of, OPDL. I don't understand. There's a lot of things I don't understand in terms of what that pathway is from OPDL and where it leads to, and then the other leagues that are also affiliated or underneath it. There's just a lot that has changed from when I was playing. But like you said, I appreciate the honesty because. You really have to try and pay attention, know what's kind of most beneficial for you or your child or whoever. But apart from that, if you can just touch on really quickly the actual training model that you have to develop. Like it's more than just starting an academy and we're going to train kids.
Yep.
There's more thought into actually how to develop a child of different ages and whatnot. So if you can just touch briefly on kind of what research had to go into it, or is it trial and error, or kind of what makes a model efficient for kids and as they
all of the above. I mean, it's all of the above. I wasn't born in Canada, so I was born in Croatia and I came here when I was 9 years old. I played on the street. Mm-hmm. Played 4, 5, 6 hours on the street every day when I didn't have school, and then after school I still remember with the school I went to had a paved soccer pitch in between the buildings, and that's where we played. And I still remember my parents would be screaming at me from the sidelines to come home to get home to eat, and I pretend I didn't hear them. But back then, so when I grew up and in that environment that I grew up in, I mean, kids are playing every day, and it's 4, 5, 6 hours. So the game is able to teach you. Our Canadian market is different, I believe. I mean, one thing, like weather is different, so we're entering the great season of skiing and snow. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit more difficult getting outside. I still remember going to Forest Heights when I still lived by there and shoveling the box, the 18, like the box, so I can do some shooting. Yeah, but there's snow. I mean, it's one of those things, and it was a massive culture shock when I came to this country because there's nobody playing soccer. Mm-hmm. And I thought, like, this is strange. But now we played road hockey. Just didn't play soccer. So the whole objective, what I wanted to build through the academy was I strongly believe in the technical development of a player, and I thought we would have all the phases included in our academy model that would do the things that maybe kids don't learn at the club level, and provide the training that will help them when they play a game or when they during training, whatever. Mm-hmm. Work on the technical elements of the sport first, and understand all the skills involved, all the technique involved, because it's very hard, in my opinion, it's very hard to teach a tactical component until you're technically sound. So if I'm asking a player to open up and make a decision based on what's in front of them, if they still have to focus on how to control a ball, it's very difficult to do that, probably impossible. So we always felt, okay, I want to build that. So we built our bases around that. I developed an evaluation system that wasn't based on numbers. Okay. And the evaluatory process was based on comments and feedback and you know, my partner Andrew Warwick at the time, now that he's my partner, he was, I mean, he's a lot more tech savvy than I am. I'm terrible with tech. We developed even back then, we developed a really, really good program of evaluation that we could, when we evaluate, the players would get basically a report card at the end of every session.
Oh, every session.
Well, so every session we would actually, either we would type, and we got into the point where we could do it with voice, but we would, type a message to, so if an instructor was with that group, have your group of 8, we type a message to every one of the players in that group, say, listen, this is how the session went today, this is what you did well, this is what we got to continue to work on. I thought that was very important. Feedback to me is massive in the sport. And I think getting even our coaches used to it and understand, so a perspective of what are, watching and evaluating what the players are doing wrong. And then at the end of the session, we would do a full evaluation, and they would get a report card of everything they need to improve, everything they need to work on. Yeah. And we did it where we didn't, I used to actually write all that stuff out when I started doing camps for the club. And then I used to type all the stuff. It took forever, mountains and mountains of time. But we got to the point where we could just click and identify what comment we want, and it was good. So, but it took a while to develop that. Yeah. And so I based my whole component on that, the technical aspects first, and then bringing it up into a little bit of the small group oriented tasks and phases of the game, defending, but then giving support, cover, pressure, all of those things in a small sided environment. Yes. And then sort of the next phase would be the game related phase where we can put all of it together. So that is how I structured the academy, so that we can take players through that and kind of go step by. It's like school, and I'd call it a soccer school. So
that's what you said, soccer school. Yeah,
it's a building block, and we called it elite athletes because our model was based on obviously establishing football, because that's what we felt we had a little bit of an idea about. Yeah. But then we would just basically copy and paste that model into other sports. And we had some work with it. It was just very difficult to find partners that would sort of be on the same page and deliver the same sort of stuff that we did. So it never really ever took off that way. So we just stayed and focused on football. Yeah.
Well, you touched on it. You said soccer school, and after hearing about the report cards and things like that, it makes sense. And I think more players, even the coaches, could benefit from doing something like that, just because as a player, you go to train, then you go home, you go training again. I won't say there's no, but they could benefit from an actual evaluation. Look, you could perfect this a bit better or do a bit better on this. So I like that. I want to go into now CORE, the sports and recreation complex. Yeah. I'll tell you a story first. When I coached a March break camp of yours this past March, so a year ago. Yep. And I'm just paying attention. I'm seeing, we're in this facility, CORE, that, your owner or part owner, I don't want to speak on it, but like your facility, the kids there are training with, elite athletes, Kitchener Soccer, your business, and they're wearing boots and equipment from SportsLink. And I'm thinking, wow, this is someone who took football, his passion, and really made it into his life and is benefiting people within our community and made businesses out of it. So I was like, that was an eye-opening just moment for me. I thought, wow. And so going into CORE, obviously it's not just, people from the area, soccer players will know it as a soccer facility, but it offers much more than that. You have basketball, there was weightlifting, like a fitness component, classes. So can you just speak on what goes into opening a facility of that size from the start, let's say?
Yeah. So I just want to, I gotta ask you a question. I don't know if you realize we've sold CORE.
I did. Okay. So, yeah, I do realize this. But still a good business that you had.
The idea behind it. Yeah. So, CORE was, again, I would say the third piece, the third piece of why I told my wife the final piece of the project that I wanted to achieve. I think it was a culmination of all of these things together. And you've hit it on the head, and you said, you keep mentioning how it's good for the community and all that, and we do build, our objective in the beginning was obviously to create a business model and hopefully that we can sustain, a living out of it. Yeah. And we do believe we've always done everything with the intention of improving it for our community. And CORE is a massive example of it. Unfortunately, not everybody sees that, because some people will see it as, see, you got kids buying your shoes at your facility, training your facility, wearing your gear. some people will not see that as community based. They will see that as me lining my pockets.
But I think that like if that is not available, where else are kids going to play? What else are they that doesn't exist without, and it has to be a business. It's not, charity.
Zach, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just giving you the reality of what we face in the real world. And it's and I don't, at the end of the day, like I couldn't spend my time if I had to worry about every one of those people that that think like that. I'd have gone crazy. I mean, at the end of the day, we did it with the right intentions in mind, and I had to put together investors to do core, because it wasn't just mine. I was one of 20 people involved.
Okay.
The whole strategy of that was I've been looking to build a facility for a long time, and I had to. That process, what it takes to get there. I mean, I spent years and years prior to it even being open on doing things. The 2 years prior to the opening, I did so much research, and even my wife Sue, she said, like, what if you guys don't buy this place? Like, you're doing all this work. And I said, Sue, like, I got to do my due diligence. Like, this is a massive, massive task, massive project, and it's a lot of money. I don't have all that money. I have to go out and I have to, see if I can even get people involved in this.
Yeah.
My whole, and all of the projects I've done, elite athletes, sports, it was all out of passion. The one piece of advice I would give anybody else would be consider the money a little bit more, to be fair. Consider the money a little bit more than I did. I never cared about money.
Yeah.
And I still have very little, until I had kids, money had no impact in my life whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I think if you do a good job and you work, I think the money will be there.
Yeah.
I never put money as the first objective. The only difficulty with core was I was now responsible to 19 other people who have invested their money, and their view on money may be different than mine, even though it's people that I know.
Yeah.
So the challenge of that was to balance my passion, and we made it a mandate that, and the people are great. All the people that invested, it's all people that I know, and it's all high level, high quality people, meaning from a character point of view and a human being point of view, that I always look for that first and foremost. And these people were great to understand that we wanted to build a place for our community and for our kids. Even though we were in a public facility, number one priority was kids. I mean, we could have rented out, if we did this strictly for money, I probably would have had 1/3 of the rentals for the kids. To what we gave them, and just because from a financial point of view, the adult game gets you a lot more dollar for the hour. So, but we made it. That's one of the commitments I asked the investors to make, is say, kids. This is the whole point, is getting kids back in there, because we didn't have anywhere. People are complaining all the time. Where do we train? We don't have a place to train. Indoors. And then we started it, and at the end of the day, we were always booked solid anyways, but there's always going to be people say, oh my God, that's too much money. You can't, you're asking so much money for this. Again, I can't speak to that. Like, it's just, I think it's ignorance personally. And it's something that I can't control how people feel about that. But like you say, I mean, we provided something at a level that was made it possible for a lot of our kids to train.
And a lot of people benefited from it, me included. What were the day-to-day operations like to manage a facility of that size? Yeah,
it was unrealistic. So the first year of core, when we did operate, I worked 113 hours a week for 365 days a year. The first year. People go, oh my God, that's crazy. But it's not crazy. It's just it was necessary. I didn't see that as a big deal. Like, I was there every waking moment of the facility, and after it was closed.
Yes.
I just thought, well, we don't have the resources. I can't hire a staff of 30, so there's certain things I have to get done and develop the business to a certain level before it can go. The day-to-day stuff, and the new owners, I think they're going to do a great job with the facility. I mean, they have people designated for this, people designated for that. I mean, a lot of that, I did that myself. Plus, I had a really good person with me, who actually, Christina, and she did a great job, and all of our staff were good, but just she made a massive commitment all the way from the beginning of the time to all the way till the end of the facility, to kind of outline the vision and actually do whatever it took to make it happen. So we were there many times that, it wasn't pleasant to be there, and not everybody treats the facility really fairly or nicely. So, those are the things that are a little bit disappointing about it. But at the end of the day, for the most part, it's it all worked good. But the day to day, it's a massive task. Liability is massive. I think somebody considering, because there's a lot of people now, setting up different types of outfits and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to be careful about understanding what you're getting into. And for people planning that, we had a 65,000 square foot facility plus 20,000 of tennis. You're responsible for heating that, cooling that, all of that, insurance, and the figures, when you talk about figures, property tax, I've fought tooth and nail to reduce our property tax. I got to reduce $30,000 to $70,000 a year. I don't mind sharing that now, but you know what, at the end of the day, people go, yeah, that's $6,000 a month that I have to come up with for nothing. I'm paying property tax, right? And then, all these expenses, they're not in the hundreds, they're in the thousands and thousands of dollars. So you have to cover that. So there's a bit of pressure to do that. The reason I made core multi-purpose, my passion is obviously sport, every sport, but it was multi-purpose. Two reasons for that. One was to survive. One was to be able to generate enough income to pay so that the facility can go. My goal was to establish a high performance center with the different sports that were out there. We had Matman Wrestling Club, who was perennial national champions at wrestling. They had kids that are going to be heading to the Olympics. GSM Tennis, we had nationally ranked tennis players through the facility. We wanted to build that high performance center and have a physical fitness person do the work and all that. It would just be a great atmosphere, so you got a kid that plays on the national soccer team with a kid that's a national level tennis player. Just the kind of the aura of that, and just that, the training environment would be great. That was one of the things I was hoping that we could sort of achieve. But we had to do, we had a banquet hall, we had weddings at Core, which is that's crazy to me. We hosted 6 or 7 weddings over the time that we were there.
Wow. In the upstairs area,
upstairs area, banquet hall, we had to do all of these other things in order to survive and have the dollars come through the door that are going to be able to pay the bills that are required.
Right. And you spoke about spending, 100 and something hours a week there.
Just for the first year.
For the first year. But I guess a lot of people don't realize when you're starting a business and you're the owner or, the one running it, you're responsible for everything. Your job title might say one thing, but your responsibilities vary, and I'm sure it's a bit of everything. So that speaks on that 100%. So now I want to go into a bit of some general questions, because we spoke about your just expertise in football. We didn't even touch on, the Laurier men's coaching, some scouting work and other things that you've done, which is crazy to believe that you've done all that within football. So I just want to ask some general questions. What would you suggest to a child or someone who loves football, is passionate about it, gets to a point where they realize, look, I'm not going to be able to play this at a high level or college. I'm not going to be able to play this at any decent level. How could I make a career in this game for myself, or realizing what type of role in this field is for them?
Well, that's a good question. So you're saying about an athlete that feels that, okay, I'm not going to make it as a player, but I want to have a different avenue to stay involved in the sport in some way. So I want to be involved in football on a professional scale. I still think it's difficult in Canada. I gotta answer that way. I think it's difficult because to create positions or for positions that are available right now, mind you, it's changed a lot. There's a lot more opportunity now in football to actually make a career or make a living. I still think it's tough, but I think there's a lot more. Technical directors of clubs now, it's a viable living. There is a lot of clubs that are structured where it's not just the technical director, there's general managers, there's full-time staff that operate clubs now. And on one volunteer and one full-time person and a couple of volunteers. It's staff, full-time staff. So it's created a lot of jobs that way. One thing you have to marry with your desire to do a career in the game is to understand what those potentials are and your passion for that. So if you ask me, okay, you love football, you want to stay in the game, but if I had to sit behind a computer all day long and type crap out, even if it's stats, games, all that, I wouldn't want to do it. That wouldn't be something I would be passionate about. I've understood for the most part what I love to do the most. I love being on the field. I love being on the field. I love kicking a ball. That's it's so barbaric, but that's what I love. So I've had to develop a business model, and I've had to develop these businesses so that I can actually survive doing something that I love. I think the one piece of advice would be for me, like I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes, whatever it takes to make it, in the game, in that respect. but you have to be realistic as well. Because if you can't pay the bills and you have kids, you can't feed your kids.
Yeah.
You can have all your passion satisfied with what I love to do, but if you can't pay the bills, then it's a tough go.
Yeah.
And I see that with, today that the pathways to players making it pro and what they believe is a pro situation is difficult. It's a difficult one today to actually speak to with the players that are involved. But I would say I think if somebody is really serious about a career, shadow somebody that is doing something that you want to do.
Yeah.
Ask if you can be involved, volunteer some time. Say, listen, I'm really passionate. One day I'm going to be your competitor, but teach me some stuff.
Yeah.
No problem. I mean, I've done that. I've always been open door policy for that. Because I think I would love to see a lot more people involved in the game to make a living in the game, because that's going to benefit all of us.
Yeah.
Rather than being the other way where, you're going to be jealous of people or hoping that they don't succeed. I hope that everybody succeeds in football. Because if everybody does, that just makes the game grow stronger, and it allows us to elevate, the sport and the industry for sure.
Yeah. That was a gem of advice you had spoken to just now about volunteering your time and finding someone sort of like a mentor, someone who has experience in the position that you want to achieve or want to succeed in. So that's brilliant. I'm sure a lot of people will find value in that. So with the state of football in Canada now, we see the CPL. We're in the World Cup in a few days, which is amazing. Obviously, 2026, it'll be here. So I guess a few questions. What do you see in terms of the future in football here, let's say 5 to 10 years? And is it all positive? Like, do you see it just developing and flourishing? When we speak about European countries, we're a bit behind in terms of like development, maybe our league stature and things like that. Would you say that we're on a good pathway to getting there? And just what are your thoughts on the future?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't really predict what's going to happen in the future exactly. I'll answer that in the sense that I've answered that question from the beginning of time, from the beginning when I was involved in football 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I hope it gets to the point that the pathways are going to be created. We're going to have an actual real, a domestic league, and CPL is a good step towards it.
Yeah.
Something that's recognized, something that allows our players to, when you talk about Europe and being advanced, well, you know what? There's history. Europe has history, and there's people that have season tickets for 75 years within a club. Like, we don't have clubs that are that old here. We have three MLS clubs in the country, whole country.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
No.
But at the sense, in order to survive, we have to be able to justify it. Now, if you look at the MLS, the stadiums are packed. There's tons of people. I said to my wife, I'm so like, you know what? It makes me happy. I barely watch soccer, to be honest. I barely watch soccer on TV. I watch extra, I'll watch a little bit of it.
Yeah.
I'm around it 24/7.
Yeah.
So people go, and there's a ton of people that know way more about, the state of the game at the international level than I do. I know the basics, and I watch it. And I, to be honest, sometimes I get enthralled. I go, I love watching this game. Some games I'm bored. I'm like, this is shit. Like, it's not even worth watching. But that's not a discredit to the level. But I'll tell you, the level of the MLS is extraordinary now, in my opinion, anyways.
Yeah.
Humble opinion. I don't think we can equate ourselves to Europe. I think we just have to build our own model.
Yeah.
I think the infrastructure of what we have to do. I believe our players here are as good as anywhere in the world. At the younger ages, I think our kids are fabulous.
Yes.
I don't think our infrastructure, including myself, as from a coaching perspective, is good enough to deliver what we need to deliver to develop players for a level that's appropriate. That's one. Two, our scale, and I know economy right now is but that's across the world. Economy is struggling right now everywhere, but we're still entitled. We still have everything at our disposal. Our kids, for the most part, aren't going hungry. There's a massive difference. There's a massive difference when you get you're playing football and the only way you're going to get out of poverty is to play the game.
Yeah.
That player, if he has to break a leg, he'll break a leg.
Yeah. He is hungry.
Our kids will not do that. So, when we say, oh yeah, he's going to go, we're going to go for a trial. Well, you're setting a child up for disappointment and failure because they're ill prepared for what's required. And I'm not saying anything about our quality or ability, because I think, as I say, kids here, I just don't believe the pathways quite exist yet, and I hope they develop better, and I hope more of them open up so that our kids that are good and are committed are going to have a proper shot at getting there.
Yes. Yeah, interesting. I want to touch on, lastly, too, just obviously we spoke a bit about you coaching at Laurier and then the academy director job with Kitchener Soccer. So what do you think is most important in terms of traits in a player? There's multiple traits, I'm sure, but when you look at a player, I'm sure you do, scouting at a higher level for university and then lower level in academy. So what traits are there that are maybe common between the two, but some that are just standout traits you think in a player?
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, I did scouting for TFC as well for a period of time.
Right, yeah.
And
I did look that up, yeah.
And that's a tough question to answer. So the reason I say that there's so many standards and levels in soccer and football, I think when we talk about the traits, the first trait, and I think now in this day and age, the first traits I look for in a player are resilience. Resilience and character. That one today is a lot tougher. Yeah. In the past, that wasn't really something, and we always understand the mental aspect of the game is massive. It's important. Without it, you can't survive. But it was just more assumed that most players have it. Now, dealing with failure is different. Societally, like we all deal with, like our kids are dealing with failure in a different way.
Yeah.
We as coaches have to be cognizant of that, in my opinion, again, and deal with them in maybe a modified way compared to what we used to before. So I learn every day I'm on the field. I always believe it's a learning opportunity. I've changed my approach to coaching only because I think in order to be effective, we have to adapt. As human beings, we have to adapt. Yeah. I'm annoyed by it sometimes, to be fair. I'm going like, why would I friggin' have to do this? It's frustrating. But I'm going like, you know what, I almost want to say like, listen, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be playing sports. Like, just don't do it. And I go, that's unfair. Yeah. We still have to try and support that particular athlete because there could be issues that we're not aware of. So, and especially today. So it's the traits that I would say you need those traits, the resiliency and the commitment level to actually training. When kids say, we recruit for Laurier and 90% of the players say they want to play pro. And I don't know what that means anymore, because a lot of the players today are being told, you're going to go here. We're going to send you. Yeah. Don't worry. This team is going to get, we're going to go to Portugal and you guys are going to get looked at. I've never heard that before. Like, it doesn't happen that way. You probably know yourself because you've been in that environment. If a team's interested in a player, they don't look at 20 guys. They look at one guy that they're interested in.
Yes.
And what does pro mean? Pro to me, like if you want to be a professional athlete, that would mean that in the next 5 to 6 years or 8 years of your career, you make enough money that you're good. You don't have to be stressed about life later on because your career, like afterwards, you got to start from scratch. So having a background in something is very important. Yes. You can't just go into like, I'm going to throw all my eggs in this basket. You're an injury away from being nowhere. Yeah. But also, what do we consider professional? If you consider professional going to, I don't want to use any particular country, but I'm just saying you're using Czech Republic or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yes, yeah.
Division 4. You're a professional athlete, but you're getting stale toast and you're barely making enough living to pay your expenses while you're there. I don't consider that professional.
Yeah.
Now, is that a step to get there? And the commitment level of the athlete, I respect that a lot. But there's got to be a realism, because if you're doing that for 3 years in a row, you got to think about that and say, well, maybe this is not going to work out.
Yeah.
And it's a tough one. So, and talent identification, I think there's a lot of mistakes made all the time because we predetermine, oh yeah, this kid's got no chance. This kid's got no chance. And probably I would say that stuff. I still think there's a basic predisposition of athleticism that you require to play at a certain level. If you're not built like that and you don't have that, you don't have a chance to play at that level. So I don't know why the parent would be disappointed when I tell them that. And I say, I can't tell you where your kid's going to end up. But I'm saying, if you're asking me to make your kid for that level, I'm saying I can't. It's impossible, because I don't believe your kid or your athlete's son, daughter has that particular trait that's required for that level. I don't believe people always want honesty. I think people will say, yeah, I want to know, but I think they're excited for you to tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah. So just to be clear, the aspect that you're talking about is the physical aspect that you think is necessary at a certain level, like.
Yeah, in today's game, I mean, please let's be honest. We have kids that have now gone on and played, are playing at good levels in Europe, and the physical requirement. And I'm just using that's just one piece.
Yes.
All I'm saying is to yourself, because you're an excellent athlete. You're a great athlete. You can cover the field no problem. You've got the range. Now, there's other aspects to that. Because like I think for you individually, I think like I would put you up against anybody to defend one-on-one. I think athletically you've got the ability, defensively you've got the ability. Now there's other aspects to the game.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to develop all those other aspects to make it to the next level.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying physically, if a player doesn't have those traits, like physically, even just the physical ability to move, agility, spring, first step, like
Yes.
it's just to get to that level. It just doesn't matter. You can juggle 1,345 times, or you can do around the world 5,000 times, or you can have really good technical ability. You know, the game has changed.
Yeah.
There used to be players that could survive. So we try to teach our players now. My foundation for teaching or coaching would be that, listen, I want to make you the best player that you can be technically and understand the game tactically, so that if you are a half a step slower, you may be able to survive.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know those parts, I don't know how you would survive, because the game is too fast.
No, I get it. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today. You provided a lot of information for people, again, in business, in football, all aspects of football. Lastly, I'll just ask you, this will air after the World Cup, but with Canada and Croatia in the same group, I don't know if our guests know, but you're Croatian Canadian.
Yep.
So what are your predictions? I know there's no crystal ball, but do you expect Canada to get out of this group? And what are your expectations for the Canada versus Croatia match?
Well, it's a good question. I hope that Canada gets out of the group. Like I think that'll be massive for our country.
Yeah.
I think to put us on the map, the world. I think people are already paying attention. Obviously, I think we obviously have players playing in some top levels and top leagues in the world. It'll be massive for us for sure to get to that level. I think overall soccer savvy. I think Croatia's got more savvy than Canada does overall. But I'm not saying Croatia is going to beat Canada.
Right.
I'm just saying that I think from that perspective, the football IQ overall. But I you know, to me, if you're going to ask me which one is first, I've been here. You know, I've been here 47 years. I was in Croatia 9 years. I mean, I know where I'm from, and you know, I remember my heritage. I mean, but I'm Canadian.
Yes.
I hope Canada wins first, and if Croatia comes second, I'll be happy with that. If Canada doesn't get out, I'll be cheering for Croatia for sure.
Yeah. All right, guys, you heard it here first. Canada winning the World Cup from... No, I'm just joking. Again, thanks for joining us, Mario. Really appreciate it. Guys, Unlocked. See you next time.